States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You've got to give us a moment to stand up. And
Sorry.
we're just getting up and you're halfway through it there.
Yeah, we need swivel time, otherwise we're going to do it too quick, we're going to knock each other over.
Okay.
Or it won't mean anything.
This is true. Okay, sorry. I apologize. All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hill.
Here.
Commissioner Nuttbrock.
Here.
Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Workman.
Here.
Commissioner Denny.
Here?
Commissioner Stevenson.
Here.
Chairperson McClean.
Here. And Smith is excused. Okay, thank you. Approval of the minutes. Do we have meeting minutes?
I didn't see any.
Yeah, we'll have to defer that bit. Usually we, that's one thing I forgot to say, please attach the meeting minutes for approval. Okay. So we'll defer that. Public comment. Do you have any public comment? Okay. Anyone under the table? Okay. No one here for public comment, so we'll continue with the public hearing. We'll have open it with the reviewing the materials and then open it for a public hearing in case there's any comments, right?
I'll just make a real brief statement, and that is that as part of the Growth Management Act, local jurisdictions are required to have put together capital facilities plans for schools, streets, parks. And one of those elements is schools, and the school district here in the center has amended their capital facilities plan. I'm not trying to steal Marnie's thunder here.
You can.
But we know each other. She's been before you several times in the past. And so this is part of your obligations under the Growth Management Act. School districts are required to hold 2 public hearings, one at the Planning Commission level and one at the City Council. Your job tonight is to review the materials that are presented and then to make a recommendation to the City Council.
Okay.
With that, I would probably just turn it over to Marnie Allen, who's the legal representative for the school district and has made many presentations on school district capital facilities plans.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So my name's Marnie, and I represent the 9 school districts in Clark County, including the Center School District, and I help them update their capital facility plans, and I calculate the school impact fees. So you should have in your packet a copy of the actual facility plan. It has the fee calculation and the school board resolution. What I thought I would do is I just did a brief presentation that highlights on the elements that are in the plan that have to be addressed under your comprehensive plan, code, and the Growth Management Act. I'm not sure if I just hit that. Okay, so these are the requirements that have to be addressed in a capital facility plan, typically for schools, similar for parks and roads, and as Eric mentioned. So you'll have program standards, an inventory of our school facilities, our enrollment forecast, because that's how we decide how much we need to plan for in terms of growth, what our needs are based on that enrollment forecast, then our finance plan, how are we going to pay for the needed facilities, and then the fee calculation. So in the Center plan, I've listed here the program standards. For schools, you'll have elementary, middle, and high, and they plan based on a student-teacher ratio, how many kids per classroom. And then also they plan based on what their program offerings are, like music, PE, library, special ed. And the middle and high school, usually you'll have more students per classroom than in the elementary school. So these are the program standards that are in the Center School District Capital Facility Plan.
So are those state standards?
No.
Or is that a locally adopted ratios?
Locally adopted ratios, they're influenced by a few things. Funding, how much capacity in schools, funding, but really they're also heavily driven by collective bargaining agreements and class sizes that teachers bargain for. That plays into it as well.
Okay.
How do they compare with other school districts?
They're pretty similar. I didn't bring the class sizes for all the districts, but it's usually, let me go back. How do I go back? Can I? Previous? Okay. Some of the bigger districts will have middle and high at 23. I don't think I've even seen any as high as 25 to 1, but honestly, sometimes what happens is school districts are constitutionally mandated to provide service to every student that lives in their boundaries and every student that shows up. So we'll adopt a program and say this is what we think our schools should serve. If we have more students than that show up, then sometimes you will have teachers that have more than 22 or 23 to a classroom. And a lot of times collective bargaining agreements will say if you have more than this standard, you get paid more. So other districts are pretty close. I think other districts might have a little bit lower ratio in the elementary schools, maybe as low as 17 to 1. But I guess if you're looking at 19 and 20, a little bit higher at 4 or 5 here. Other questions before I go? I'm not doing this right. So using those program standards and looking at if we have 22 students per classroom, how many classrooms do we have at the elementary, middle, and high school level? And of course, every classroom, you'll have some classrooms that are needed for special ed, so you might only have 3 or 5 in those classrooms, so every classroom isn't always going to be able to be used fully with all 22 students. But when we look at the school facilities that exist now with those program standards, there's capacity to serve 463 elementary school students, 315 middle, and then 402 at the high school. So that's what we had capacity for with existing facilities.
And that includes portables?
No.
Oh, it does not.
We build a plan based on brick and mortar because that's the facility and program that we think should be provided.
So this is a goal rather than necessarily.
This is the capacity that exists, but if we have more students enrolled than 463, which we do, then we have to add portables or we have to exceed the 22 to 1. So here's the enrollment. In elementary schools, there's 758 students enrolled. So if remember, the capacity was what, 462 if I look back. So you have a lot of kids in portables right now or classes that are exceeding that desired program standard. In 2025, so looking out 6 years, we anticipate 910 students, elementary school students, will be enrolled. We use a demographer who looks at live births in the school district in the county, pending developments, a whole variety of factors, and tries to forecast how many new students we're going to see at each school level.
How current is that calculation?
It's about a year old. It was done right around the time that the bond went out, and I don't think they've updated it since then.
So that has no correlation then to what the city projects for our population growth in our plans?
It does. The enrollment forecast for La Center, there were like 6 or 7 different forecasts. One of them assumed all the buildable lands and what the city was planning for development and growth. What was the housing forecast? How many housing units had already been approved and not yet built and occupied. And then they had one forecast that just looked at live birth rates, which is what the State Office of the Superintendent in Public Instruction does. Doesn't really look at local development trends. This growth forecast did take into account existing planned but not yet occupied developments and the city and county, because there's a big part of the county that the district serves too. Both of those jurisdictions forecast population growth and housing. So if you look at in the plan and look at current enrollment and the 6-year forecast enrollment, most of the growth is going to happen at the elementary school, with then 88 at middle and just over 100 at the high school. So about 350 additional students looking out 6 years is what the district's planning for. This shows that capacity and then the enrollment. So, you're going to need an elementary school to serve almost as many as you have capacity to serve right now. The district's going to need to do that, need to add at the middle and at the high school.
Change that one number, 666.
The current plan is based on the bond that was approved by the voters, because when I talk about the financing plan, I think most of the school facility, a school district can't build new facilities to serve growth without getting a bond approved. Impact fees covers maybe 15% of the costs, and if you're eligible for money from the state through the state school construction assistance program, then that usually will pick up maybe 25% of the cost, and then bonds really are funding a majority of the cost to build new schools because they're just super expensive. La Center didn't qualify for and doesn't have state construction assistance funds that it's using right now. So the district's facility plan is to construct the new 465 student middle school, which is underway for planning and permitting right now. And then once that new middle school is built, they'll convert the existing K campus to serve just K-5. So they'll add elementary school capacity by converting the current middle school portion of that building to new elementary school.
So does that additional elementary space that you get by freeing up the middle school, does that meet the projected need of 214 more?
No, I think what the district thinks it's going to receive in additional capacity from the elementary school is, I think it's on
Well, if you got it
this
later, that's fine.
slide.
I can wait.
Let me see. Oh, it's in the plan, but it's not in this PowerPoint, so let me pull out the plan. Because I do think it's helpful to know what the number is. It's not going to address the full need. Converting the new elementary school. It's going to add capacity for Oh, 315.
Oh, so it does.
So it will.
Okay.
It'll serve, but the existing need that exceeds what brick and mortar can accommodate, remember, the need is about 447. So it won't satisfy the full need, but it will satisfy the growth forecast.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. The cost to build the new middle school and kind of remodel or convert the K-8 for elementary capacity is listed below. The majority of those costs are being covered by the bond that was approved, but almost $45 million just for the new middle school.
I didn't understand the new land for middle school and potential elementary school, that 1.8 million in the previous slide.
Yeah, the district is forecasting in its plan. Previous. Why don't I go back? Okay, got it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So yeah, the new land there.
Right. So the needs exceed what this new middle school and the conversion of the elementary school will accommodate. So they're looking for and acquiring property for a future school.
Okay.
Could you speak to that a little bit more? Is that the Bolin property that we're talking about? Or is that a
I don't know that they've purchased it yet.
Oh, is
Bolin property?
Well, the property
Oh.
that was
The
1.875.
one on Lockwood Creek Road where they're building the new school. They purchased that, I thought.
Yeah, where the new school's being built, they do own that, but the 1.875 is not that property.
That's what I was
It's
confused.
So they're
future
looking for
property.
another piece
Yes,
in addition
for
to the
future
Bolin
growth.
property.
But
Yes.
they own the Bolin property already, so they're looking for new property.
They're looking for property for future, probably middle and elementary combined, because there's growth forecast at both levels.
Didn't we, at one point, was there some indication that they were looking at property on the west side of town?
Well, they own a piece of property, 17 acres at Bolin and 4th.
It wasn't,
No, 17th, Bolin and 17th, on the very edge of the city limits.
okay.
But there had been talk about looking at, years ago, before we were born, most likely, they were looking at, I think, the Good property,
Oh,
where the Riverside development is. That's what would be like.
That's a
but the
great
Bolin
idea.
property is still, belongs to the school district?
I believe it does, yes.
And
Yes,
so that
they are-
could-
The school district is coming forward with annexation on the bowling
Yes.
property.
So that could at some point become a school of some sort.
It will come, it's currently zoned for public facilities and will come in as a school.
Yeah.
Where is that on the map? Sorry.
I don't know where it's at, that's
It's
okay.
this property right there.
Right there.
Okay. And that's the one that's near wetlands, from what I hear.
Yeah, the back half of
The back
it.
half of the property.
This is critical areas.
We have enough problems with the current land that we're trying to get
So the-
approval for.
That's already in the growth boundary, so it's subject to annexation. That's what's-
Yeah, but I mean, the Department of Ecology is very slow at approving anything these days, as we well know.
Right,
If
so,
you- If you don't impact the land that they have jurisdiction over, it moves a lot faster.
but if you're trying to build a really big school on a
On a-
parcel
on
of
a
property
wetland,
that's got a lot of
it slows
wetlands,
down.
it's pretty difficult,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
Okay.
and pretty expensive.
Are those costs, they're all in the bond that was approved, or some yes, some no?
The bond that was approved, you're looking at this, 46.9 million was
Pretty-
included
pretty
in the
close.
bond, so not all of it, yeah,
Yeah, but almost all.
almost all of it. You know, the rest of it will have to be covered with impact fees or general fund dollars if there's no impact, if there's not enough impact fees. So that shows you how much of it came from bond. The 46.9, I don't know, the fund balance changes, so this plan was prepared back in March, is when it went to the school board. So back in March, when we prepared and finalized that plan, we looked at the amount that was in the district's capital project fund, which included bonds and some amount of school impact fees. So there's a portion of that 46, almost 47 million that is impact fees, but the majority of it was the bond. So that's how these facilities are going to be paid for, and La Center District is fortunate because they did get a bond passed, and so they do have a lot of the money already secured. A lot of districts don't. If you were to look at Battleground School District's plan, they have a need to build elementary, middle, and high school, and they don't have a bond, and so it's a struggle with figuring out how you're going to fund the schools. A key piece of the finance plan and a key piece of this plan is the school impact fee. I've included in the slide the formula, and you have attached to the plan that formula applied to their plan. So we take the portion of those costs that were needed to build the new middle school and to convert the elementary school for capacity for growth. We just take a portion of those costs that's going to be available for growth. So a portion of the added cost for elementary to serve 315 when the growth was only 200. We'll include that proportionate share in the fee calculation. Apply that formula to those costs and that need for growth, and that's how we come up with the district's school impact fee amount. It includes the average assessed value of taxes that are paid in the La Center School District, and that's directly linked to the bonds that get approved. And so this year, when we updated and calculated their fees, you see that they were collecting $4,111. It dropped to $3,501. The primary cause for that drop was the bond, because in that formula, that piece in the parentheses that says times AAV times TLR, that's the tax levy rate, and the average assessed value, that's calculating a discount for property taxes that are going to be paid through the bond. So under the Growth Management Act, school impact fees can't, or any impact fee, can't cover all of the costs that are incurred to build public services. They have to have some other share of public funds going to pay for those needed facilities. The impact fee formula does that by recognizing there are going to be property taxes and a bond paid, so that gets subtracted out of the full cost or impact on schools. And then the SM is the state match. If the district were to receive state construction assistance, that comes out of the calculation too.
So does this say then that for a developer, that this is a plus for them? The fact that they are going to be able to charge a little bit less for the home because of the impact reduction? Potentially? I mean,
Potentially. That'd be awesome.
So I'm thinking if we're having developers come in here, that's a plus thing for them. For us as a city saying, we're not increasing our fees, we're actually in this area, we're reducing the fees. Is that correct? Am I reading that right or not?
Well, I guess the way that I talk about it is school impact fee represents the calculated share of the impacts that new housing is going to have on schools. So I get reluctant to say it's a plus and we're reducing it and charging less, because it's really a formula based on how you're going to impact schools. And when it goes up, I don't want to say, oh, we're penalizing you and you have to pay more. Nor do I like to say, most developers, when it goes up, will say, oh, you're affecting affordable housing, you're pricing us out. But if it drops, they don't reduce the cost of the house by $600. So it's not directly linked enough.
But that is a line item in our total city-wide
Impact fees.
Impact fee.
Yep.
It's a line item, and last year it would have been higher than it is this year,
Yep.
theoretically, right?
Yep.
So it does have, it potentially has a reduction to the bottom line.
Yes, it will
Okay.
reduce the bottom line cost that a developer pays your city.
Okay, so I'm thinking that from a developer standpoint, that's a plus for us, I think, as a city.
It's more pays the city collects the fee on behalf of the school district.
That's right, absolutely, yeah.
What the developer does with the savings, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Understand, yeah, right, that's,
Nothing goes
Yeah.
down.
yeah.
So is the school district obligated to charge that value?
The school board could recommend and ask the city and the county to adopt something lower than that,
Okay,
but
and-
they can't ask for more.
And so I assume they're asking for that calculated value?
Yes. And I did, just because usually I always get asked, similar to program standards, maybe I'll add a slide on that. I get asked, well, what are the other districts collecting? So several of the school districts, the 6 listed up there that say not updating, are not updating their CFP this year. They will be doing it next year. So I don't have updated calculations for those districts. I have what every district's collecting on the far right. And then the districts that are updating this year, Hawkinson, Woodland, La Center, those are listed there. The Ridgefield School District isn't updating its plan this year, and that $6,530 is what was adopted in 2016 by the county. But the city of Ridgefield, with the Ridgefield School District that's been seeing huge growth, increased that 6530 to 7730, and then just in the last few months increased it again to 85. And then there's action going on at 179th with Urban Holding, and the county looking at lifting that, and that includes a lot of residential development that's in the Ridgefield School District. And at the county's hearing on that, there were a lot of people from the community that came that said, county, you need to make sure that developers of new housing are paying the full cost for impacts on schools and public infrastructure. The calculated fee for the Ridgefield School District is $11,289. Because they need to build elementary, middle, and high, and they all cost a lot. So their calculated fee is very high. The Ridgefield School District, in light of hearing from the county and the community, has asked the city and the county to increase their fees to about $10,100 next year, and all the way up to their calculated amount of $11,289 the following year. So,
You know, as we've learned in other discussions about fees, you really can't look at just the school fees
Right.
by themselves. You got to look at the total fee structure, because others will have up,
Right.
where the others will be down. If you're really looking at the impact on the builder or the buyer, you need to look at all the fees.
Right, exactly. We usually see things going up, not down, so.
I know, and the
so-
district was so disappointed in me, and I'm like, it's a formula and it's your data, I can't manipulate that really, so. But if they buy a new property, continue to grow, and when they finish the middle school and have a need to build maybe an elementary and middle, and they recalculate the fees, there's a good chance they'll go back up. We just have to wait and see.
And like I think you said that the fees really only represent a small percentage of their overall building fund.
Yep.
Is that-
Yep. They represent a very small amount of the total cost to pay for the new schools that they need. Majority of it, 60-70% will probably come from bonds in most cases. Even so, right now I'm working with Vancouver and Evergreen School District. Like Vancouver passed a $700 million bond, Vancouver about a $600 million bond, and they're rebuilding several schools. And those bond proceeds are going to cover 70 to 80% of the costs for their schools.
What is our percentage today for La Center on our property taxes? What do we?
It is,
Because
calculation.
that's the ongoing thing. These are one-time costs here.
Right, so give me 1 second and I'll tell you exactly, well, I can tell you what it was when I calculated it in March, but
Close
it was $2.94 per thousand, just for the district, for the bond only. And back in 2015, when we calculated the fee, it was $1.49. So, it almost doubled, almost went to $3 per thousand. The average assessed value for a single-family home district-wide, so this is county and city, is $384,800. And back in 2015, it was $283,000. I get those average assessed values from the county. Looks at all the property in the district. Other questions?
So that money, that's, again, for the money that comes in for property taxes, that's going completely to pay for the bond?
Yes.
Are there individuals also that are purchasing bonds, these bonds? Are these all handled, these bonds only handled through taxation, is how they're paid?
Yeah,
It's not-
an
they're not bonds-
underwriter.
These are not bonds that people can purchase. as
Not
bonds.
usually. Like, about 5 years ago, when Evergreen issued some bonds for its schools, they worked with someone who had a program where they allowed the public to
Right.
buy
Yeah.
part of their school bonds. But usually the bond is sold to investors, bankers who kind of compete on buying the bond to get the proceeds and offer the best.
Well, years
rates.
ago, but 20 years ago, 30 years, 20 years ago, Torrance in California, they actually did that, and you actually were able to purchase a bond and, or bonds if you wanted
Yep.
to, and they were payable in 5 years. In other words, that was it. I mean, it was kind of like, and you knew what you're going to get at the end. It was kind of like you're making an investment, and yes, you're going to get a little bit of money, but you're doing it for a reason of schools or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's not something
That's
we're doing
not-
anymore. That's
It
kind
doesn't
of
happen anymore. I don't know if it's
pretty
just
much out of the
too much
taxes.
work or why they don't do
I
that.
understand,
It's
yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
Kind of cool to be able to buy a bond in the community where you live, right? To invest in your own school.
Right, and it's secured
Yeah.
bond too, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Get off track here. Sorry about that.
No,
But somebody's selling the bond, and probably you can buy some of what.
Right,
the
it's
party-
probably in mutual funds or money
Yeah, it's
markets or
probably through a
whoever,
mutual fund.
whichever. And I don't know who bought their bonds, but
It's inside something big thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a very small portion of a very big bond.
Right, yeah,
Up
right.
there, yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Any other
Well, just,
questions?
this is maybe a crazy question, but all of these cities, as far as I can see, are growing rather quickly. And yet we're dealing with a finite amount of land and a finite amount of growth that could go under the growth plans. Does that mean at some point this is going to get, these bonds are going to get paid off and some of these numbers are going to go down? Just looking way out.
Well, probably, so turnover and the demographics of a community do affect the growth and the need and the cost for schools, and you could just look at Vancouver for that example, because a lot of the Vancouver school district, not all of it, the northern Vancouver school district is kind of up by 134, Salmon Creek, up to almost 179. That part of the district's not fully built out, and there's some growth there. But most of the Vancouver school district is all urban and built, and as it's turning over, you're having not as many children living into those houses, and you're not having very many new houses built, or you're having condominiums built down on the river that don't often house as many students. So Vancouver School District, their $2,800 school impact fee was based on just the need to build some elementary school capacity. And that's a huge district, and some would think there's a lot of growth in Vancouver, but.
So, again, just real quickly here, the daily operation of our schools here in the center are pretty much then paid for by our property tax revenue. Is that correct then? That's the only other revenue is that
Well,
the
you
only
get
revenue stream?
state tax,
Huh?
state taxes.
They get a percentage of our,
Yeah.
they get a percentage of our state tax. Any idea what that represents?
No, I mean, there's a whole separate, so operations of the school are funded by, some by property taxes. Used to be a cap, with the legislature 2 years ago, passed the McClean legislation, which shifted how funds were paid for operations, mostly salaries and other things. Shifted that from local taxpayers through levies, a lot of that back to the state. And they said, okay, you can only levy up to $1.50 per thousand school districts locally, because there's a constitutional mandate to fund public education, and the state wasn't doing it. Local taxpayers were. So they shifted that. Then they found out that $1.50 per thousand wasn't enough, and the money that the state was putting in was aggressively bargained by a lot of districts, and so there were a lot of challenges. So this last session, they raised the $1.50 per thousand to $2.50 per thousand, and that's local operation and maintenance levies. That's a separate levy that's voted on. That only requires simple majority to vote, to approve. That pays operation and maintenance plus the money that the state funds, and they have a formula based on how many teachers, and it's complicated, but,
Okay.
and I don't know the total percentage of the operations costs that come from the state and how much comes from local levy.
Gotcha, okay,
That's completely separate from capital.
gotcha. Yep.
Do you know just roughly how much of the district is outside the city limits?
I might have that in the plan in the very,
I
I
didn't-
think a
didn't
pretty
see-
big portion of it.
I didn't see it in the plan, so.
So,
You're talking about
total
enrollment?
size.
No,
I
just
think it matters where the money's coming, because it's not that.
square miles of.
A similar
So,
calculation.
I guess the whole district is 38 square miles. How big is the city? I don't-
Question.
That's fine, I'll go research that, and see where I can find it someplace.
I don't
The school
know.
district's boundary, I know, stops around Timmins. Most of the school district's boundary is on this side of the river, and to the north of.
And north and east.
Yeah.
So the impact fees are based on the entirety of the school district?
Yes.
So there's a balance between the numbers and what's charged anyway.
Yeah, we use district-wide averages.
I guess, I said regardless of how it splits, I guess. It
Well, if you
doesn't.
build a house out in the county, you get charged the same thing as if you.
Right, so I don't, so there's no inequity in the way it's.
Right, and I don't know this to be true, but I could see how the average assessed value for property in the city might be higher than the average assessed value of a residential property in unincorporated Clark County. And we take the average of all the property district-wide, so we use averages.
2.5 square miles.
Oh, so we're 38 and you're 2.5.
Really? Oh, 2.5?
Just think of how far those buses
That's
are
what
going.
it just said. I just looked it up.
Yikes.
Okay, so what else do you need from us?
Just appreciate your support of La Center Schools and a recommendation to the council to adopt the plan and the fees. That'd be great. If there's any other information that I didn't provide, or you have any other questions, funnel them to Eric, to me, however you want. Whatever information I can get, I'm happy to do that.
So, Eric, do we need a formal motion and
I
a
would
vote?
recommend that you make a motion in a second to recommend. if you
Do we
choose
have to formally open a public hearing, though? And
Oh.
close it even though there's no one here?
Did you?
Yes, please, open a hearing.
For
Take
feedback?
some testimony from the public.
Okay.
Close the public hearing.
That's what I thought.
Please,
Thank you.
thank you for the reminder.
Okay, the public hearing is now open at 7:05 PM, or, yeah, 7:05 PM, sound good?
7:05 in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
You said
Do we have any public testimony?
I'll testify just briefly, so you have some public testimony. In the record, Marty Allen for the school district requesting that you adopt the capital facility plan as presented and the impact fee recommendation.
Great, thank you. Do we have, and having no further comments or people in the room to provide additional public testimony, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at, well, we'll wait 1 full minute, how's that? We'll do it at 7:06. Oh, well, my clock says 7:06 PM, so there we go.
That's why you got 2 clocks running.
Yeah. Well, it said 7:05 a little bit ago, so it must have been right on the range. All right, so public hearing is now closed.
Now it would be appropriate to entertain a motion in a second
For discussion.
and discussion.
Yes. Do
Could I just
we
ask-
have any discussion that we want to, discussion first, right? And then we can do a motion.
I just want to ask a question. Do I vote in this as an alternate or not?
No,
No, okay.
because we've got, oh wait, no, Jeremy's not here.
Jeremy's not here.
So
Well, we
it's,
have a quorum, right?
yeah, but the alternates can vote. One of them can vote. They can both now vote
You can
since
vote.
Jeremy's not
I
here.
don't have any strong feelings
have a
about one
flip
way
a
or the other.
coin?
I just want to know whether there's...
Who sat in last time? Jeremy, or I mean Ray or
I
Ken?
think Ken's gonna have to cast his first vote last time.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
let's
so.
give it to Ken.
All right.
You said this time, right? Okay.
Oh,
Or last time. Wait.
You voted last time, I think you were.
Did he?
yeah, I think so. I think that we were just, the bare minimum here with me.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's Ray's turn. That's what we're saying. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, that's what
Okay. All right. So Ray's going to be.
Okay, so I move that we recommend to the city council that they support the La Center School District capital facilities plan and the school impact fees as proposed.
Second. I got to make it worthwhile.
Okay. All in favor to adopt the 2019-2025 capital facilities plan school impact fees? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Motion so made. Thank you.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yes.
I want to congratulate us on not having a great discussion on that complicated formula.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
That was a killer, wasn't it?
Yeah, you remember that?
My gosh.
We discussed that in the past.
Jeff,
To take advanced
make sure that you
mathematics to
identify
figure that one out.
That the alternate was voting.
Ray Denny.
Yeah, that Mr. Denny voted as the alternate.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
She does a nice job presenting.
She does.
That's what she does.
Okay, unfinished business. I know I'm clean, but I'm not McClean. Sorry. The agenda. Just saying. Well, I did too. I didn't read all the way through, but yes. Anyway, outdoor lighting. Dennis Nuttbrock,
Yes, ma'am.
you can present your updates.
Okay,
and hopefully we
if the
can.
computer comes up here, which it doesn't seem to be working.
Uh-oh. That's video.
Okay, so what I did was, I went back and listened to our audio from the last meeting to make sure I was capturing all the changes appropriately.
Can I ask just a question?
Yeah.
Did you ever find the audio from the prior meeting?
I did not look for that, so,
Well, the only reason I ask is
Jeff?
because it's missing.
Jeff, did you find it? Did you, anybody?
Jeff wasn't taking any responsibility for that meeting. He had nothing
Okay.
to sign yet.
All right.
I recorded it.
Oh.
I left the
the-
disc on the table,
And no one's found it.
and no one's found it.
Oh, no.
So I was just hoping that Dennis had found it, and we know where it is, and we can retrieve that for those minutes.
That would have been helpful, yes.
any version, the last one? Yeah, that one right there, yeah. Okay, so this is what I sent out. It is, it shows the changes that I made to the version we reviewed last meeting. And like I said, I've listened to the audio a couple times to make sure I've got everything incorporated.
No, this one.
Sorry.
This one drives this one.
Okay.
That one.
How do we go full screen here?
Down in the corner, where is it?
So let me just go through briefly and show you what I did, and then we can come back and talk about it and see if I've really captured everything. So if we, in the applicability, we had a discussion about how this applies to residential. And so the first paragraph here has been changed so it applies to all non-residential uses. Everything except residential.
Is it possible to make that larger? I'm having a little trouble reading from this end of the.
Larger.
Well, I
Or
can
maybe dim the lights a little bit
I
too?
could do that too.
I can see it on the, my computer, but
No, I can.
I got it all on there.
If I do that.
Yeah.
Is that
Oh,
better?
yeah, great, thank you.
That's good.
Exactly.
Might be too much.
No, it's good.
Okay, so this first one deals with new non-residential land uses and multifamily dwelling units with a common area. That's pretty consistent with what we've been doing before. The new one here tries to deal with the idea that we wanted it to apply to new construction at the time of construction. And so the way I've done that is, so this applies to all newly constructed single, detached, and attached dwelling units and multifamily dwelling units without a common area. So meet the requirement at the time of certificate of occupancy is issued. Now, Eric, you may have a different idea, but I know that's an action that happens that officializes the house being complete. And
Make
so,
the-
I would
A
just
comment?
simply say that we prior to the certificate of occupancy. So,
Oh,
okay,
so you don't get the occupancy permit unless the lighting is.
Yeah.
But at the time of building permit review, you want to demonstrate that they meet it or not, so people get an advance notice.
okay. Would you prefer I say it that way, at the time of permit review?
No, this basically puts, I think, a pretty good incentive in place. And every builder wants to get the occupancy.
Right, they've done,
The only downside to using occupancy permit is that I have seen on occasion, people complain loudly that they can't get the occupancy. They put all this money into it, paid all their fees, and they can't get the occupancy permit for some little thing.
all they gotta do is follow the rules,
Yes.
right?
I had a very tiny little typo, I
Yeah.
think. On the last line of that second revised paragraph, it says, "At the time of the certificate of occupancy is
Oh.
issued." So the "of" probably should come out of there?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna change that to prior to
Okay.
the issuance of the occupancy.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Prior to issuance of the certificate of occupancy.
Okay, thank you. And then with that, we had a discussion about, we wanted the residents, either of a new home or existing homes, to be able to change. And so, under the exemptions here is any modification to a single-family detached or attached. Oh, yeah. So we're exempting any modification to a residential home. So they have to meet at the time they issue the occupancy permit, but you can come in the next day and change any of the lighting the way you want.
Can I just ask you a question there?
Yeah.
So the way it's written there, it doesn't seem to make any difference who makes the modification. So that wouldn't preclude the builder from making a subsequent modification?
Well, you're right, it doesn't, but at the time, he has to have it configured correctly to get his occupancy certificate. And you're right.
Okay, but if you went with the certificate of occupancy and then you dated it after the certificate of occupancy, would you have a perfect before and after type situation?
I would ask the question, is it in the builder's self-interest to immediately tear out something that they paid for and then put in?
Oh, no, I mean,
So I think the
I'm trying to follow
likelihood
that,
of
too.
yeah, I mean, it's,
That sort of,
I think it's highly unlikely that they want
Okay.
to do that.
I think a minute afterwards, why would anybody spend money to do that?
Okay, then the other change down here was change at Eric's suggestion, but what this is the curve, I don't want to call it a curfew, but 1 hour for non-residential uses. So this is all the commercial stuff. Once it's closed or no longer occupied, the outdoor lighting should be reduced consistent with safety, security, and usage needs of the illuminated space. So that's a pretty broad,
Yeah,
but the objective is that if you're not using the space,
there's a
dim your
message
lights.
there.
Right. Let me see.
So when they come in to get a permit, the required permits, they would need to demonstrate what their plans are to have the lights extinguished in accordance with the requirements?
No.
No?
Well, I don't think so. It doesn't say that. Previously we had it in here about, the review authority would set curfews. And we went around and around that, so we've watered it down to be this now.
Okay.
So what would happen in terms of practice is that, let's assume that this is a commercial use or an industrial use, so they're going to go through a land use approval process, a site plan would be most likely. And so one of the conditions of approval would be to implement that code section about shutting down the lights would be a condition of approval. So the city would have the ability to enforce that if it ever chose to.
Or if somebody came along, complained, you could
Correct.
point to a section of the code that says you should be doing it. But
Okay.
again, it's pretty watered down because it's consistent with safety, security, and the needs. So that could go a lot of ways.
The only other thing I think is advertising.
Well,
That's signage.
Those are covered by the sign code. Okay, then this is a new paragraph added to address the residential lighting in new construction, which basically says that outdoor lighting shall not exceed the lumens specified in this table, which is what we had there before. And so the residential is primarily an LZ1, a little bit in LZ2. I noticed as I was printing this off that LZ2, the center row, that should be 1050. I made obviously a typo there. And the other thing I've done, I've reduced the LZ1 from 1050 to 800 lumens. Because this is for accent lighting. Just for your reference, 800 lumens is about a 60-watt incandescent bulb. 1050 is around 75, and the 1260 up there is close to 100. And before we talked about accent or landscaping, or it seemed like it was the third term we used. All the terms relative to those kind of things have been changed to accent lighting, and there is a definition that's consistent with what Dinah read me before, I think, out of the Ridgefield Code.
Just a word smithing question.
Yeah.
So as I'm looking at this table, and I need to understand what initial lumens.
There is a specific definition to that? Yeah. And what it is the lumens that's written on the package, basically. There's no
Calculation.
degradation. You don't account for degradation over the life of a bulb. It's what it was when it was initially
I see. Okay.
manufactured.
Okay. Makes sense.
And then here, this is the paragraph that deals with shielding. Let me back up here. So this says all luminaries, which would be residential and non-residential, must meet these bug ratings. And so what this says is for allowed uplighting is no uplighting allowed in our primarily residential area. But we footnoted that to allow accent lighting with newly constructed residential dwellings is allowed if the accent luminary is aimed and shielded so the light emitting element is not visible from other properties. So this is trying to make that balance between allowing people to have their accent lighting, but also protecting the neighbors that don't want to necessarily see that lighting shining in their bedroom. And so I think that's what we decided we would do. And so for any lighting that isn't an accent lighting, the U0 still applies. And then I took that node off of here because it doesn't make sense anymore, because in the In the LZ2, we're allowing some uplighting with the U1. Okay, I think that's the end of it. Yeah. So those are the changes I made. I hope I've captured what we wanted. Any questions or comments on any of that?
Where are the LZs defined?
They are defined. They are defined in. They are defined. They are defined.
On the separate definitions, they weren't there.
On the bottom of page 3, it starts with lighting zones and talks about LZ1 or LZ0, 1, and 2. Page 3 and then top of 4.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
And so in that definition, we've covered all of the zoning districts in the city. They're in one category or the other.
On page 7 in that note, just a grammar. Not visible from and other properties? Should be not visible from other properties?
Or maybe you want to say from another property.
From another, yeah.
Running the and the other together.
That's what I meant. So
Another?
I'll say it from another property.
One word.
Yeah.
So then you have to make property
Yep.
singular.
Anything else you guys caught?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
I think
That
so.
should fly.
Do lights, please, Eric.
Yes, of course.
The common and uncommon areas, I just had a question about that.
Common and then, oh, yeah.
So newly constructed without a common outdoor, so is everything else considered part of new development with a common area?
Well, the reason that, for multifamily, the reason we have the distinction between those with common areas and those without common areas is because those with common areas are generally parking lots, and you want them controlled, that parking lot lighting controlled.
Yeah, okay.
And so the multifamily that doesn't have a common area, like a duplex or a
Right,
triplex,
okay.
is regulated like it's a residential
Gotcha,
dwelling.
okay. All right,
That's
so we're
the
not
way-
excluding anything. But
No,
okay,
I think
we're
we've got all the types of residences
covered.
covered.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Anything else that was changed? Definitions?
Oh,
that
yeah.
we need to go through?
The definitions, why don't you know how to do it? That first, definitions. So right at the top is the definition that you've got for accent lighting or accent luminary. Means any luminary that emphasizes a particular object or draws attention to a particular area for aesthetic purposes, and I think that's right out of a quote from our chairwoman. And there's some other things in here, like the curfew went away, because we no longer use the term curfew. You remember the discussion about review official? That's all gone away because review authority is what Title 18 uses. And then this section down here cleans that up. The only place review authority was used is in the definitions. Title 18 uses review official. So that cleans that up.
Which says change, review official. Is that part of the document itself, or it looks like an instruction to do something?
Well, this is an instruction, this is on the definition, so it's asking for that change to be made in the definitions.
Okay.
So your note, change review official to review authority, and the following existing definition goes away once that is
Yeah,
accomplished.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, that's an instruction to go do that.
Okay.
We don't want the code publishing company to put that light in there.
Not that was,
No.
That's right, what is that?
And Eric, I was wrong last time. Review officials only used 37 times in Title 18. I said 54, but
Could you go back to light trespass, only because it was something that came up in the council meeting definition? How frequently is the term light trespass used throughout the code now?
Light trespass? Did it come up?
it's
It's
used,
in the purpose section, perhaps.
yeah, it's in the purpose section. And,
They're not actually regulating light trespass.
well, we are in terms of, I guess like that uplight, that accent lighting note, that's really light trespass, and I could put it in terms of light
When I
trespass.
read it, it doesn't, I don't really want you to, just because of the council reaction. Because when I read that accent light piece, you're talking about being able to see the element,
Yeah,
which means that you could still see light on the other property. Light may escape, a darn little thing, to the other property. But
Right.
as long as you don't see the element,
yeah.
Right.
you're okay.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the means to actually go out and measure the value of light trespass that's occurring, which is why I like the idea that you don't see the element. That's an objective standard.
Okay.
If you do that, then you have to actually have the ability to put light barriers up
Correct.
that are 8 foot tall, up to 16 foot long, in black, and maybe dark blue only, something like that.
so does that mean,
Well, in other codes, I've seen light trespass regulated in terms of the illumination at a property boundary of being so many luxes. And if the city has got the tools and the people, they can go buy a meter and go out there and measure it. But, we didn't want to go down that path.
Right.
so does that mean any light whose source is visible beyond the legal boundaries?
No, that's not what it says.
I know it doesn't say that, but that's what you're talking about, right?
Talking about some objectionable amount of illumination where you don't want it.
What Erica was talking about is some of the light can escape, if you will.
Yeah.
It will.
Either benign or not benign, but light escapes. But if the real measurement is the source of the light being seen, I
That's
don't,
what we could regulate
Well, I think
objectively.
I'll go back and look and see if I use light trespass any place other than in the purpose. And if I don't, I would propose just eliminating this definition and leave it in the purpose as a generic nebulous term.
Because as I read the code, the intent really isn't to deal with trespass. It's
You're right. But that is one of the negative effects we're trying to address, light trespass, sky glow, glare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that laundry list of things that.
Yep.
Okay, so I will, is that okay if I'm not using any place else, I will just delete that definition?
know with me.
Good with me.
I'm fine with that.
Super.
Glare.
Right. Light trespass.
Light is escaping.
Okay, let's see. So I know Jeremy's not here, and I just wanted to at least voice some of the conversation that I had with him the other day. And I know that he was concerned about a couple things, having any kind of restrictions on residential, as far as including that in the code. And then the other one was having to reduce lighting down at the junction. His theory being that since ALNA's light lit up, why are we allowing light to, or why are we not being able to match the light at ALNA to be competitive as far as attracting customers and people to the center? Does that make sense? So,
First one we've already addressed, right? We've discussed
yeah.
exhaustively residential, non-residential.
Yeah, and the one at the junction, I think, actually was more his concern.
At this juncture, I think we've talked about it. I don't see
Okay.
that we, in fact, at this point, have no way of determining that what we've got in place is not adequate. I think at some point, if there becomes an issue, that'll be brought to our attention,
Right.
and someone will be looking for some variance on that, which could in fact introduce us a change in our code. But at this point, I don't believe we've I think
I
we
think we
spent a
should
lot
go
of,
ahead with
we
what
spent a lot of
we've
hours and
done.
time on trying to be sure.
And when it gets to when the developers start building up at the junction, and we really get to some details, as they go through the process, we'll find out whether it works. And I think it will work.
Right, okay.
I think most of the developers want to do exactly what we're proposing.
Right.
Okay,
And it just as a point of logic, we don't have any control of what ALNA does.
None at all.
right.
Now, we're talking about, why doesn't the place, these rules we can't control, why aren't we having rules that are the same as that place? Just doesn't
Yeah,
hang together logically.
Okay, and then his last concern, thank you, was about like drug trafficking in areas that were less lit, if that happens. And this was interesting because I did talk to like Sherwood, Oregon, where there's like a Walmart and they have lower lighting and they're really trying to avoid light trespass and all that. And I asked them if they had any more issues, and they said they were the safest town in Oregon. Out of all the cities.
I don't think until we see a problem with drug trafficking, I think we just go forward with what we have.
Or crime. And, okay,
I just think that the chief of police can guide us if he sees an issue.
okay. And I did talk to Chief Denny, just to see what he thought, and he thought actually having motion detectors were better than having like floodlights here. I did talk to one police department that thought floodlights would be better, but Chief Denny felt that motion activated lighting was better because then it really highlights someone moving through the area.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other comments that somebody wants to provide? Okay.
Well, I think it's,
I just wanted to make sure his point of view was heard.
sure,
Since
that's
he's not
good.
here.
Thank you for doing that.
Okay, I hope that addresses his concerns. Okay, so now, with the changes for the wording that we have, and what was the first one that you had? Rewording,
Yeah, I've captured,
the time of the certificate of
Right,
occupancy
I've got
is
that.
issued to
Yep.
be prior to.
Yep.
So with that, do I have a motion to move this forward to the city council?
I so moved.
And oh wait,
Dennis gets to do it. Okay.
and I was going to write a cover letter too to kind of express what the opinions were of the city or the planning commission and some of the people that had opposing opinions, so that at least they're informed of it. And I'd like to use part of your statement too in that introduction. So I was going to work with Eric on that, just so you know. So if anybody's has any issues with that, let me know. But all right, so now we have a motion.
I move that we forward this code as revised tonight to the city council.
Second.
There you go. Second one, David.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion so made.
Okay,
To move it forward to
just,
the city council with the revisions.
We've had several discussions
The
about
outdoor
how
lighting
best to go do this. Eric had suggested we go buttonhole each of the council members. I talked to the mayor briefly about how he wanted to do it. He suggested that he could get, two of the members together at a time and sit down and go through it. So, I like that idea. If you guys agree, I'll go back to the mayor and see if it sounded like he was willing to sponsor that, call a meeting and.
Let him
I
do
think-
it. That's a great way to do
So
it.
about greasing the skids, basically?
Yeah, the idea is to make sure we've got this all covered so we don't have another aborted
Right.
attempt at the city council.
Right.
Yeah, and what I would suggest is sending this out to the city council members and then having them say, if you have any concerns, let the mayor know, and then the mayor can set up the appointments so that we can.
I don't
My
think,
suggestion is I would not go that route because I
Okay.
think you'll get silence.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so I think Dennis's approach is more proactive.
okay.
And it's what you need, and especially with those council members who either were A, silent, or B, in opposition to this.
So I'll, how do we formally let the mayor know that we're ready to move forward? Do you do something?
Well,
Or-
I'll write a cover letter, and you'll give me the final copy. I'll go over the cover letter with Eric, and we'll get it over, and I'd like to, that's my week, like this week. I'd like to get it done by the end of the week, if I could.
it'd be basically a cover letter, recommendation, quick digest of what transpired, the issues that were discussed and resolved, why we need to do that, a lot of it based on what Dennis did, and then recommendation that the council set up a meeting, or set up a time to review this publicly.
Okay.
And the back channel is when you do your two-on-two meetings.
Okay, so I'll give the mayor.
Question on that there.
Yeah.
We are in fact going to be sending this out, once this gets published properly, to the council, correct, members?
Yes.
Okay, so, and then following that would potentially be these two-on-two, or these meeting, mayor with two, right, potentially?
I'd like, well.
I mean,
usually-
I'm thinking.
Well, usually those things don't get sent out until the week before.
Okay, but what I'm thinking is that if they have this document and they've read through it, I think there's a good chance now, based on the language and so on, that the mayor's gonna try to get a hold of it and say, we have no problem. In other words, you may not have a situation where someone says, yeah, I'll meet with you. I don't know that.
Well, you've at least had two members who took the time to come and talk with you.
Understand.
And I think as a courtesy
Oh.
to them, you might want to go back to them personally and say, here's what we've done.
Right.
Did we listen well enough? Are there any other concerns that you have? And if not, why do you like this? Why are you willing to support this?
I think the
In fact,
linkage
the mayor-
between the objections that were had and the things that we did is critical to the whole thing, because a lot of the actions that were taken in terms of changes were a reflection of what they were looking for.
Right.
So, Eric, I assume that the city council can't have a quorum there and we can't have a quorum?
Correct.
Okay.
Unless you schedule a work session with them, and it's a public meeting, but
The mayor didn't-
more than two on either side, either two.
I don't think we need that.
Okay, so I'll let everybody know when it occurs, and you can arm wrestle over who wants to be the second one if you want to be there.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Sound good for everybody?
The
Sounds
plan,
good to
just
me.
to recap though, the plan then would be to release after the background meetings, so we would release for publication, if you will, on the website, the code changes and the report.
to make sure we don't have
Make sure
any
we've
others.
covered the bases.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll see if I'll go see the mayor tomorrow and
Okay.
get that rolling, and
Okay.
then you hold off until.
We could be
done.
drafting.
Yeah, you
Yeah, I
can
can
do
be
that.
drafting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
Hey. Hey. Okay.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Big time. I know.
You want chocolate?
whiskey by this point.
Believe it, huh?
Cottage housing. Do we have anything for cottage housing?
Yeah, let me make a comment on that. I think last week or the week before, what's Link's?
Wolverton?
Wolverton called me and wanted to meet with me, and he's still mulling over these ideas for his property, and he had this idea for these small houses, and so I told him about our cottage housing. I sent him a draft of what we had, so he is still interested in it. In fact, I was surprised, Eric, to find that we hadn't implemented that. I lost track of that. I thought we had, but we had
No, we
not.
haven't.
There were still some actions that we need to take. So anyway, I just want to let you know that there is someone in the community that was interested in that kind of development.
And he'd also be interested in hearing about the lighting ordinance too, once it's
yeah.
closer to being finalized.
Yeah,
so.
because
Okay.
he did express an interest in that.
Okay.
Okay, that's my input.
All right. Any other items on the cottage housing for tonight?
No, I only asked to put it there simply that we could get it back in front of you again and figure out how you wanted to address this, what your time frame is to try to wrap up the loose ends on the cottage housing and move it back. If my recollection is correct, you had a public hearing already on this. You made a recommendation to the council in a work session. They had some suggestions. We've come back and worked through that, but I don't think that if I were to poll myself, I would probably have three different opinions as to where we are in the process.
So
right now. So
wasn't there some side discussion, which we haven't addressed here, about allowing it in LDR 7.5?
That's the big issue.
That's the one issue,
I don't
yeah.
think that's been resolved yet.
Okay, so on the next agenda, we can put the cottage housing discussion about allowing it in LDR
7.5.
7.5.
Because I think we addressed all the issues that came out of the city council.
Okay. Yes, and if we can review that.
Who's got,
Who's got the?
since Doug isn't here, who's got that latest draft of the code?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's on the hard drive at your office, and I know that I have a copy.
So you might distribute that for the next meeting, so we've got that to review.
Yes.
And I think you had some recommendations about how to incorporate the LDR.
I did. I prepared a memo on that, so I can freshen that up again.
Okay.
Okay. We also had gone through a list with the mayor and with Jeff about what our priorities were going to be to work on, and we were trying to figure out who was going to work on what. So I'd like to bring that up again at the next meeting. So Eric, if you and I maybe can revive that list and include it on the agendas, that would be great. All right. So and we're kind of skipping.
I know we were talking about trying to get through the critical area code, because there's a time frame limit on that, I think.
Yep. And actually, that kind of segues into Eric providing the monthly planning development activity report. Is that right?
What's next?
Monthly development plan. Yeah.
I would probably defer to Mr. Swanson on the agenda. I mean, on the development report, since he's the author of it. But
Oh, okay, sorry.
I do have something to talk about in terms of critical code.
And reports in general. Okay.
All right. I'll just go through this report here. And as usual, these sorts of reports, especially when they're prepared for a June council meeting, with that date stamp, they start to, sort of smell a little bad by now.
Mind if we do updates as you go through them?
Sure, we can do that. So Heritage Building, you've probably noticed that they're moving dirt on that site. And so this is Building B. It's the third and final phase in the Heritage Center complex.
Is that the Chevron station?
Yes.
Yeah, just right over here. La Center Middle School. Last word was Superintendent Dave Holmes was conducting weekly sorts of video conferences. He would pull up one iPad with, I think, the Department of Ecology on one and the Corps of Engineers on the other, and he would face them towards each other so they could see each other, and was encouraging them to talk because they have sort of differing opinions on some things on the middle school site, and so they've been sort of going in this circle, and he's trying to resolve that, but they're hoping to get some work going on that site very soon.
Is anyone from the city participating in that at all? Okay.
Minute Management, we held a pre-application conference on June 11th. This proposed development includes a 93-unit, 4-story hotel, about a 5,000 square foot convenience store,
Shell station.
roughly 2,500 square foot drive-through restaurant, and over 16,000 square feet of retail,
Wow.
multi-tenant, single-level retail commercial building
In phases.
in phases.
The first phase, though, would be the rehab of the commercial building, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Existing Shell station. Yeah.
Well, I
The
thought-
hotel is further down. the
From
road.
what I saw the plans, I thought that was all going away.
Which plans?
The ones that were in the pre-application comments. So the current building, that footprint stays?
No, it gets
Uh,
moved.
Yeah,
Okay, that's what I thought.
yeah, it gets moved. There's
Yes, I
a
shouldn't have said rehab. They're going to.
new convenience store.
Convenience.
Are they gonna still have a gas station there?
Yes.
Yes. 12 pumps. I believe.
But as I understand it, it doesn't quite match our concept for the junction,
Correct.
but they are grandfathered in by some development agreement.
They're conditional use.
They are, well, the city entered into a development agreement during the time of the Paradise Park Municipal Center interchange redesign, and so Minute Management gave up some land going to accomplish it. They got some land, and they also are vested to the code that's in effect at that time, which is March of 2016. So that's the code that they can build under. They could choose to build under the new junction code, and in fact, most of the uses would be permitted, but they don't have to.
Yeah. The thing I noticed is that the building that sort of, I guess, like, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay. At what point would there be documents that we could review? I guess that would be an application.
It should be the city's
They're online.
practice is to put them online under a new development project.
So would they be there now?
It should be.
Yeah, that's where I found.
Great.
I think maybe I can walk you through how to do that. If you go to the city's website,
Go up to the links, quick links,
quick links,
And then-
recent land.
recent land use applications,
And it's done chronologically.
management.
Got it. Great, excellent. I'll take a look.
There you have it.
So that package will have.
The whole package has their,
So everything that they
Site plan.
submit to the city as part of the development review, pre-application conference or development review, it's available for them.
There's the site plan.
That's
that's existing.
and is proposed.
Which that gas, those
There's
gas
the
pumps
hotel
are
right
terrible.
on the freeway.
Oh, I guess there is an exit right there, isn't there?
Is that taking it all, any consideration of widening the La Center Road there?
No,
Or not, no, Paradise Park Road, excuse me?
no,
Roundabout.
no.
Yeah.
So convenience store, 5,000 square feet, 6-pump fueling station, multi-story tenant building, drive-through restaurant on the corner there, and then 93-unit hotel up there.
that's
All
interesting.
interior parking. So
What's on the right?
This?
Yeah.
Drive-through restaurant.
Oh, okay.
That's the part that caught your eye, I'm sure. Because this, under the junction code, this is supposed to be a primary corner,
Right.
but they're vested under the old ones.
And so, Eric, they can exit the gas pumps out to the west here and then go down this, no, over, go to
Here,
the.
so this access gets closed,
Yeah.
so they have 2 access points and then one up the top up there.
But from the
The gas
pumps here,
pumps.
can you go out to the west here and go along this aisle?
The drive
No.
aisle?
No, this way?
Yeah.
No. The drive aisle? Yeah, actually you can. You can go.
It's open.
Yeah.
When I first looked at
Up to
gas pumps, that's a
24.
terrible place. The circulation's gonna be terrible in there.
When they put in gas stations, and I've had several clients who do gas stations, the big question is how do you get the semi trucks, the fueling trucks through here? And that's what drives the circulation.
The trucks are gone away.
Well, no, it's the tank trucks that come in and deliver.
Oh,
the
the delivery,
gas.
okay.
They have a really difficult.
Oh, geez.
I
Do
can
they
see
still
that.
have to separate truck pumps like they do now?
No, no.
Okay.
That'll go
Too
with-
much into it.
That's given to Alien.
Parking to it.
Yeah, they've got it at A now.
On housing, so at the time of the preparation of this report, Riverside Estates Development Agreement and the post-decision review, which is incorporated into the development agreement, were set for council action on June 26th, and that is set to occur tomorrow, at tomorrow's council meeting. The Phase 1 final plat approval is expected to occur shortly thereafter. The Phase 3, which is a multifamily component, a pre-application conference was conducted on May 14th.
And since that time, they have submitted applications on a site plan review application. The application isn't complete, it's missing some things, like the application fee. And the fees. For 144 units in
Six buildings,
6 buildings.
3-story.
3 stories, 24 apartments at each 3-story building.
So will that be a type 2 approval?
It'll be a type 2 review. They're not asking for any variances. Use is allowed.
The Holly subdivision preliminary plat public hearing was conducted by the city's hearings examiner on Thursday, June 13th. Stevens Hillside Farm, the property owners met with staff on May 28th to talk about project status. And Country Hills Estates, a pre-application conference was conducted on May 14th to determine the process for establishing a preliminary plat for the area. And this is currently platted under condo laws, and there's a need to adjust some boundaries within that development.
Are they talking about doing something, again, are they just in preparation of them wanting to do something at the north end of that property?
That's part, that planning, pre-application did not involve development of that 5-acre parcel on the north end. That question is still in the courts as to who actually owns it.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, great.
Who owns the northern piece?
Yeah.
The action that is contemplated here in this report involves taking the existing lines, lot lines, where those mobile homes are, and adjusting them to reflect the realities on the ground. For instance, in some cases, lines bisect structures that should fall one side or the other. So, it'd be a correction.
It takes a lot of surveying to do that.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem.
There are 3 annexations in the offing, and Eric, do you want to discuss those?
Yeah, the one, well, I'll do all 3. The Bowling Creek, we're trying to get a council hearing scheduled for that in August. That's been certified for sufficiency by the county. And that's when I was asking Marnie Allen about that property and whether they're going to be buying a different property. But that's the property that's been in the UGA's for quite a number of years now, scheduled for school use.
And that UGA sticks out there, right, just to cover
Just
that
like
piece,
like
for
a
that.
thumb. Yep,
Right.
exactly. The Peter Schlentz notice of intent to annex. Peter doesn't live in town anymore. He wants to go forward. I've had some phone calls with him, emails with him rather. But he'll come forward.
Where's that at?
Where's that at?
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So Peter Schlentz's property is at the south end of Ivy, right across from the Holly Parks, new Holly Park subdivision that was just approved. So it would be, here's Ivy. Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So this is the new Holly, no, wrong. Here's the school. Here's the park. Here's Peter Schlentz right there.
Okay.
That's Ivy. This is the Holly Park subdivision. This is Ivy, and that's Peter Schlentz's 5 acres.
And where's this, Connor Harrison?
So the Connor Harrison annexation is this.
Oh,
thing
that's
right
right.
there. So that, I just today received certification from the county on that project.
Is that the one off of Gaither?
No, that's those little bitty lots right in here. Gaither goes up here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's Link Wilverton's property is up here, but there are 3 little lots right in between, actually a stem, and 3 little lots.
But there's lots
that
right there.
separate Gaither and whatever that is,
24th.
24th, yeah, from Wolverton's property. So this just got certified today. So we need to go through the secret process and the public notice and then schedule a council meeting.
And aren't you also doing the Peterson?
Thank you. I knew I was going to thank you for that. So the Peterson annexation is right
Yeah.
there.
No.
Yeah, right there. And that's moving forward as well. So we will have annexed most everything by the end of this year. Except for this area down here. And a couple of little properties right up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So this report also includes the Planning Commission's activities. We, of course, met last on June 11th to talk about outdoor lighting standards. It was contemplated at that time that the critical areas ordinance update would be discussed this evening, but that has been postponed until August. On economic development, the East 4th Street widening Breezy Creek culvert replacement project, the city's been in contact with the Department of Commerce regarding the 1.5 million state appropriation received for that project. And we've gone through now what is called the pre-contracting process with the state. So we filled out a questionnaire and submitted some other materials so that they can draft up a contract between us and the Department of Commerce.
So that money has been appropriated.
It's been appropriated, so now we're getting ready to spend it.
So is that basically design money then?
It is, design, permitting. I doubt there's going to be any right-of-way acquisition, but there would probably be sufficient funds there to acquire what little right-of-way is needed for the project. TDS building. So we've completed the pre-design work that the architect has been working on. That's all done. They have a pre-construction scope of work that was submitted to the city. An appropriation was made at the last city council meeting to move that process forward. And so I believe the mayor is executing documents in the next day or two to start that scope of work with the architect. And we're in consultation with the school district as a potential tenant in the building for their administrative offices. And then Mayor Thornton and I participated in a tour of areas in Washington County, Hillsborough, Beaverton primarily, on June 4th as part of the City of Ridgefield-led Discovery Corridor Adaptive Infrastructure Needs Analysis.
Wow.
And this is a project that is at least in part funded by the state DOT. And if there are no questions, then that
Was that helpful?
our report. Is that project helpful?
Was that tour helpful?
I think it was beneficial. We were able to stop, one of our stops in Beaverton, we heard from Lynn Peterson, who's the president of the Metro Council, former secretary of the Washington State Department of Transportation, and I think transportation policy advisor to Governor Kitzhaber in Oregon prior to that. She's been a Clackamas County commissioner, so we heard from her. We heard from John Southgate, who is an economic development professional, has done a lot of work in Washington County. His successor at the city of Hillsborough, who's the economic development director there, and the executive director of the West Side Economic Alliance. And just talking about how their economic base came to be.
And how all their traffic nightmares came to be.
Oh, yes. Cannot forget those.
One question on the junction. The north side of the Shell station, I see a sign that says future home of some pet hospital.
North side of the Shell station.
On the 3B property.
3B properties?
Great big, 4x8 sign.
What's it say on it?
It says future home of some pet hospital, had a name.
Banfield?
Yeah, maybe it was a Banfield.
Yeah.
Or something.
I know nothing about it. I know that the property was listed for sale some time ago, and we've had some discussions with them about signage on the property for, advertising the property for sale, but that goes back a couple months, I think.
It's been there for,
Might want to give the 3B's a call.
it's been there
Have to
several
see
weeks.
how they're doing up there.
Huh, several months.
Is
Well, no,
litigation
excuse
completely
me,
done
several
up there?
weeks. I was saying several weeks.
Are we done with litigation up there?
No,
No.
in fact, there is a hearing
I think it was last week.
last week.
Yeah,
Yes.
up in Tacoma.
Right, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
And at this point, that matter largely is between the hearings board and the county. Once land is annexed, it comes out of the jurisdiction of the hearings board and the county. It's under the jurisdiction of the city. And the only action that can be taken to reverse that would be for the city council to de-annex the land, which is unheard of. So, for all intents and purposes, that land is in the city, it's developable.
It's just
The
noise.
courts have upheld that finding.
But the battle continues.
Just
The
noise.
battle
we're
really
listening.
continues with the county. I think it's, the hearings board wants some kind of pound of flesh out of the county.
It sounds like it.
So,
A few pints of blood or something.
Yeah.
with that new pet hospital or pet clinic, whatever it is, the question in my mind is, okay, if that's the first one, how do we ensure that our vision for
Yeah.
that junction gets implemented? So I'd be anxious to see how that happens.
I think it's going to be a real challenge and exciting to work on.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Eric, did you have
So
any?
the last thing on the agenda, other than adjournment, is the critical areas code. And I've talked with you several times about this over the past many months. Several months ago, we said that we, under the Growth Management Act, have to have a critical areas code that regulates wetlands, riparian areas, steep slopes, et cetera, that is consistent with best available science. And best available science changes because of science, but also because of what the legislature deems to be appropriate activities. And ecology helps to interpret that. So, as we've talked about before, there have been some changes in the science and some changes in state law and some new more recent interpretations from ecology as to how they regulate wetlands in particular. So the city hired, at that time, the firm was called Berger ABAM, a company that's been, has roots that go way back in this county, back to when J.D. White or John White started the company, the White Company many years ago. Anyway, so they did an analysis of our critical area code based upon what the new recommendations are. Some of the recommendations are required, and some of them are merely recommendations. I think I've sent that to you all several months ago, probably back in April. You should have it. It's on the website, too. You want to check and see if it's on the website? Sorry. It should be there.
Wrong mouse.
Anyways, and I know that Ray has provided some technical comments on the analysis that Berger ABAM did as well. That's about 7 or 8 pages of yellow sheets of paper that I have that from you. You
Done
did.
it a long time ago.
Yeah. Anyway, so the problem.
Whereabouts would it be here?
Under Planning Commission, maybe. While you're doing that, and then there's projects that the Planning Commission is involved in. No. Website needs some work.
That's for sure.
Yep. Well, I'll keep talking while you poke around, I guess. We'll make sure it's up there. Let's put it that way. I believe I've seen it.
It'll be where?
It should be.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that can't find
Economic
anything. It's just really
Planning Service.
logical.
Planning
That's
Service.
intuitive.
On the right-hand side under Resources. Right there.
I always want to look at this map here that shows the subdivisions, and I always
All right, so
have
there's the
a terrible
code.
time figuring out where it is.
Let's check on critical areas. Under Tell Me About. I don't think it would put there, but. No. Okay, that's not it. Okay, we'll make sure it gets there, all right? So what's happening, just to make the story shorter, I asked the mayor if we could extend the contract that Berger ABAM has. Now they're called WSP USA. They were bought out by another company. It's like one fish eating another fish. And that's true. And so beginning in August, a guy by the name of Ethan Spoo, who I've known for years and worked with for years, he's done work in the center too. On the kayak launch, for example, he was involved in that. He will be working with you in order to get that code through the adoption process. He's on contract to do that now, so I'm going to step away from that piece of work, and they'll come in and start working with you.
So will they come in with suggested code changes?
They will come in with suggested code changes. exactly. And you will also, and the ecology comments that we're seeing. And my instructions, my recommendation, I should say, to Ethan when he was started, when we made the switch over, and even when he was just doing the review, is tell us what we have to do. We will do that, obviously. Then there are a number of ecology recommendations, and tell us whether we have to adopt those recommendations or not. And if so, why? Plan a direction. Why do you recommend it? Why do you not recommend that we do that? Recognizing that we're only looking at doing a minor amendment to the critical areas code so that we don't get trapped into a long update in shorelines, which you get to do next year.
No, we're going to do that.
So that's where we are with critical areas. So Ethan will work with you in August and in September, and the plan would be to try to get this through the Planning Commission. September, if we're really lucky, but I doubt it. October would be the time when we should anticipate having a public hearing on the critical area code. Then it goes to the City Council.
Is there any feel for the overall direction it's taking? Is ecology?
I'm reasonably comfortable with the review that I've done of it. There are a number of recommendations that, for example, this one bugs me. I'll give you the ones I don't like. We have in our code what I call it's what's called the reasonable use exemption under state law. Mm-hmm. And when I helped write this code many years ago, we said, look, if people have a legal lot of record, they've owned this lot, it's been legally created years and years ago, and now we're imposing these environmental regulations on top of them, which I'm a tree hugger. They should at least have the right to get some use out of the property, to get a single-family home on the property. So I wrote the code in such a way that those folks who have that type of constrained property have the right to put a house on that property. We'll work with them to try to have the least impact we can. And I've got a project going on right now with Elisa Faust off of Pacific Highway, same thing. She's going to get to put one house on a heavily constrained property right next to Highland Terrace. And ecology is saying, no, you can't do that. That's not best available science. Because best available science says you're supposed to protect the resource, not allow someone to put a house on the resource.
Does that become a de facto gift?
No.
It just sounds like if you can own the land but you can't use it.
Yeah.
The reason that I put it together this way was to avoid the takings claim.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new case out in the takings world right now that I've been reading. And I think we're wise to do this. But that's one example that you're going to have to struggle with a little bit. Do you want to continue that ecology, that right for the person to have one single-family home on residential property, or do you want to adopt ecology's recommendations? I'm going to tell you to still allow the one single-family home. Get away with it. So that's the kind of conversation that we're going to have. There'll also be some conversations about steep slopes and earthquake hazards. There's some new information that's coming out about that. And so our earthquake and seismic hazard, our landslide and geohazard code right now is very outdated. And so there are some significant changes that we're hoping. We're built entirely on floodplain right here, unconsolidated soil.
Well, there's an interesting deal in the news tonight about you crazy Oregonians allowing construction of public buildings in tsunami zones.
Tsunami zones, we don't have that problem here.
No, but they're bigger.
Knock on wood.
The reason I asked the question was that when I remember when we did the shorelines, there are a lot of things that were coming out of ecology that when you looked at the words, didn't hang together.
Yeah.
And we had to really work with that very strongly and over a long period of time. And mysterious edits would come in and things like that. So I was just wondering whether they've changed their orientation a little bit on the thing.
Probably worse.
I don't know.
I would just suggest that you save your anxieties when we deal with the critical areas because shorelines is coming back.
Save your frustration for the real one.
Save your powder, so to speak. Hopefully the update that you end up doing for the shorelines is very simple. They just had there's a workshop coming up within a week with ecology folks to talk about what's expected in the new shorelines update. And there's a little bit of money available too. I'm going to check into that to help you with it. Well, let's not go down the shorelines path.
Okay. thank you.
Anyways, that's what's going on with critical areas.
Great, okay, and then Ray and I went on a tour of Port Vancouver last weekend? Seems
Yeah.
like a week ago, pretty much, a couple days. And with Doug Boff and my mom. And one of the things I heard is that all of Clark County, correct me if I'm wrong, is a free trade zone. Have you guys heard that before?
That's Mr. Swanson.
You might want to double check on that.
What's
I
that?
I had asked them the question, and that was a response to the question I asked.
Yeah,
Because I was thinking of it in terms of property, free trade zone would be an attractive thing for us to have. You familiar with
What is
free trade
that?
zone?
I mean, I remember from years and years ago, but what are you referring to in the 2019 context?
Well, I think it's the same context. You have goods come in, and there's duties applicable to the goods on imports. But if you take those imports and have them travel in bond somewhere, meaning without paying the customs duty, and then you input U.S. labor into them in some facility, then you can reduce the tariff on them. So the example I'll give you that I remember a hat, and I'm sure this happened. They bring in, they made stuffed toys. So stuffed toys are big damn things. But so you just sew the skin except for a little bit, have all of that done in Europe or Asia. You bring it in, you stuff them in the United States in a factory, and you lower the duty rate. But that's just a simple example. There's a lot more
or
complex.
like if you have a car and the radio comes from somewhere else and,
Right.
the shell comes from somewhere else, you put it all together here.
But, you've noticed that tariff rates are somewhat unpredictable lately. I think the benefit to the center would be if we ever had one of these things, is you could have the goods come into the Port of Vancouver, which is a bulk commodities port by and large. But you can have stuff come in there and transform it in a facility in La Center, which would basically be a factory of some sort or other to input U.S. labor, reduce the tariff, and apparently that possibility exists.
Yeah. And also,
There,
go ahead.
there are lots of zones, innovation partnership zones, opportunity zones, free trade zones. I think free trade zones have been around for quite a while.
Oh, yeah, they have.
The example that comes immediately to mind for me is Terminal 4 in Portland. Toyota has a facility there, and I know there are other auto manufacturers that have similar operations where cars are brought in from overseas, and then using labor on the port facility, they'll put in the seats and they'll put in radios and some other componentry to finalize the automobile before it goes to market. So it really
they suggest it's viable here.
it is viable. It depends on the amount of handling. Oftentimes, those sorts of operations are most efficient if they're done right at the terminal site. Terminal, for example, is cars come off the boat, they go through the final conversion process, and then they go into rail cars, right, all on
And off they
site,
go, yeah.
and are shipped.
Yeah.
east.
That's a logistics question. In Kansas City, they have underground mines. They have immense caverns that are some distance, well, there's no port as such there, really, river port. But these things are filled with things like computers and things like that because it's a temperature control type environment.
So is this concept being discussed in the Discovery Corridor AIN?
No.
Okay.
The Discovery Corridor discussion is primarily about transportation and utilities in the I-5 corridor between La Center and Salmon Creek.
Yeah.
And
So I think it's just be open to it if the possibility arises.
Sure.
the other thing I found out is that you can have landlocked ports. And Walla Walla, there is a port of Walla Walla apparently, and they started a wine incubator. And I don't know the details about that, but I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if that would be something else we could do. I don't know. It was just interesting tour too,
Oh,
just
yeah.
overall. So we saw a submersible ship that could take on water, sink down, pick up submarine, offload water, haul out the submarine, and transport it. So it is interesting.
The port itself is bulk commodities, and it used to be on the Portland side that they had container traffic, but now there's very little container traffic on either of the ports because the container ships are so big that they can't call on the ports anymore, they can't get in there.
No.
So, so it's basically bulk commodities, automobile carriers.
And then we did a lot of grains and
A
oats.
lot of grains, yeah.
Imported from the Midwest, or like shipped through the port from the Midwest. But anyway.
And then there's linkage with the barges coming down the Columbia. So.
Yeah, so anyway. So it was interesting. But, and I think that was it. Anything else we want to bring up for tonight?
Well, you mentioned Highland Terrace. What's the status there?
So phase one is the preliminary engineering plan review that's and so we're anticipating that phase one will come forward within the next, maybe they'll come forward by the end of this year with plan application. But Tony's got to do the engineering, so to approve the plans before they actually do the site work. It's still a ways away.
All right.
I move we adjourned.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion so made to adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, where'd you find it?